Is your horse ready for a total tail transformation? ShowSheen has you covered. ShowSheen instantly detangles for smooth, full, radiant tails. Plus, ShowSheen is proven to reduce hair breakage, so your horse's tail not only looks great, but stays full and healthy looking. ShowSheen is fast and easy to use. Just add it to your grooming routine to keep tails tangle-free. Learn more about how ShowSheen can transform your horse's tail at showsheen.com. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Winning Insights, a bonus series of the Ride Podcast. This week's episode is going to feature Bud Lyon, and he's going to talk about some strategies for riding a ranch riding pattern. And he's going to discuss the best practices for riding the pattern and what you should do in a show situation, and just some tips of his for executing the best pattern of your ability. So stay tuned, and here's Bud.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We're here for day 2 of our Ranch Riding 101 clinic at Mark Rafus Reining Horses. And yesterday we focused a little bit on our transitions and some of our log work. We talked a lot about fundamentals and just some general concepts in ranch riding, kind of what the basic idea and concept and definition of ranch riding is and what the judges might be looking for. Today we're going to try to build on that, and we're going to do some pattern work. And we've got several riders here, myself included, who are showing at the World Equestrian Center in a couple weeks. And so we're going to take the opportunity to kind of run through a pattern or two, and we're going to talk about not only the execution of the horses and riders in these patterns, but we're going to also discuss a little bit about show pen strategy and sort of where the judges are going to want to see you perform this pattern. So pattern placement becomes really important. So I'm going to demonstrate on this horse here in a minute, but before we get into all that, we're just going to talk a little bit about, the pattern itself and, the way that it's drawn on the paper or the way you see it viewed on your phone, tablet, whatever. That is simply meant to be a guideline for the exhibitor. So it's not something that you have to necessarily try to execute with precision in the areas as it's drawn. Now, that's not to say that you should not execute your transitions efficiently and effortlessly as much as possible, or that you shouldn't take into consideration pattern placement, because all that becomes very, very important when you're showing ranch riding horses at a competitive level. But what it does mean is that you're not required to execute that pattern exactly as it's drawn. You should execute it as per the written description, and there are certainly some areas where the judges expect to see you do your maneuvers and transitions. But you also have to take into account that, many times we go to horse shows and every horse show facility is different. Their arena dimensions are different. That's going to impact the way your ranch riding pattern lays out. And that's something that I think is especially important to talk about today. So what we're going to do today, we've taken this beautiful track that Mark has here, and we're going to use it as our pretend ranch riding arena, as if this were a competition. And I think this is a great opportunity to do a ranch riding pattern, because a lot of times you have to be wary of where you are in your arena, and you have to have spatial awareness, you have to have arena awareness. And you can do that sometimes in other arenas with fencing and with signage, or at a horse show where there are a lot of visual aids and reminders. By virtue of the fact that this is, an outdoor track, you don't have as many of those, and I think that that's a great mental exercise. And a lot of our riders are going to be challenged to remember where to hit their spots and exactly where they want those transitions. Now, of course, I'm going to demo the pattern first, so they'll get the benefit of that, we hope. And but I think it's important that we talk about some of those things like finding some sort of visual reference when you get to the horse show to help remind you that this is where you want to do your transition, or this is where you plan on executing your maneuver as it's described on the pattern. So what we're going to do today, we're going to start with what is actually AQHA ranch riding pattern number 1. The way it is drawn, or the way it's displayed for the World Equestrian Center show, it's essentially the same pattern, but because of it's displayed differently, it looks a little different on the page when you look at it. So again, your pattern placement sometimes is going to be dependent upon the size of your arena. I haven't shown at the World Equestrian Center, but we drove by there the other day, and just looking at the arena that we are planning to show in, to me it looks wide and it looks square compared to some other arenas that might be more oblong or rectangular. So that might impact how you lay your ranch riding pattern out when you get to that horse show. Those are things that, it's always a good idea before you mount up and go ride that, you walk over to your arena and you just kind of take a look around and you gather some, mental pictures of where you think you're going to want to execute your transitions and your maneuvers and such. It's also a great idea once you've done that to go back, get saddled up, get on your horse, come back in and just walk around the arena if you have that opportunity, and kind of, complete that picture, fill in the shading on that mental picture that you had before you got on, and ride that pattern, even if it's just at the walk, just to try to get, a feel for how it's going to lay out when you're horseback. Me personally, I'm not a huge proponent of practicing your pattern in the ranch riding over and over and over again. I think that is a very good way to set yourself and your horse up for failure, because horses are smart sometimes, and I think you can teach a horse a pattern, and I think that they can learn to anticipate when you give them that blueprint. So I am more in favor of putting pieces of the pattern together and practicing certain elements or sections of the pattern. If I'm going to practice a pattern the way it's drawn and the way I want to execute it, there is some value in that, because you do need, muscle memory practice in putting the pattern together. But I think that doing it more than once or twice, in its entirety and at full speed, can be somewhat debilitating, because you will teach your horse exactly what's coming, and sometimes horses, get anxiety and they learn to anticipate. So many times what I'll do is I'll walk the pattern or trot the pattern more than I will do the pattern, as it's described on the page, either the written or the drawn descriptions.
Thank you guys for tuning into the Ride Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and please be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow Horse and Rider Magazine on social media and find us at horseandrider.com.
If you guys have any questions or comments, please be sure to hit us up at horseandrider@equinenetwork.com. We want to hear from you guys.
And if you like what you're listening to, be sure to leave us a review on iTunes.